Welcome back to today's video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you guys an updated 2024 presidential election prediction between incumbent President Joe Biden, who will be facing off the former president Donald Trump. And this is going to be an updated prediction as of February, which is this month. And finally, my logo from my channel logo actually got added to this website, which is obviously an interactive 2024 election map. So as you can see on the left of your screen, my logo just got added. And before we begin with the prediction, I do want to mention we have channel memberships. The link to the channel memberships will be pinned in the comment section down below, or you can find them in the description section, or you can just click the join button on my channel page. Become a member today. We have custom perks and custom emojis. And also, we just hit 1,000 subscribers, meaning we are now on the road to 2,000 subscribers, so make sure you are subscribed. Start off by filling off the likely states for Donald Trump and Joe Biden. First of all, the likely states for Donald Trump. Actually, I do want to mention that Iowa is now considered in the safe margin for Donald Trump, safe column, and Ohio will be considered likely for Donald Trump. I expect him to win it in 2024 by nearly 9 percentage points. He won it by nearly 9 points back in 2020, so he should do the same thing, if not win it by maybe even 10%. And then Florida will also be likely. It's pretty much a lost cause for Democrats at this point. Republicans had gerrymandered in this state to make it more of a red state. It used to be, once back in the Obama era, a purple state. But ever since the 2016 era of Donald Trump, ever since Trump took office, Florida has just abandoned the Democratic Party, and trends and recent shifts have just favored Republicans time and time again in the state of Florida. So Florida, Donald Trump should win that pretty comfortably. I expect him to win it this time around by about 8 percentage points, a little bit less than Ohio. And then I also think Texas will be in the likely column for Donald Trump. So that is going to be 3 likely states for Donald Trump in 2024. And then also Maine's 2nd congressional district will also be likely for Donald Trump. That was a Trump district in 2016 and in 2020. So I expect them to vote for Trump once again in 2024. So Texas, I expect Trump to win it by a likely margin of around 7 to 8 percentage points. That is similar to the margin he won in 2020, but 2020 was a little bit closer. It was 6% instead of the margin I have him winning it by now, which is nearly 8 percentage points. And if you take a look at the polls actually have Trump winning a state like Texas by nearly 10 points. Yes, 10 points. That is double digits. And same thing goes for the state of Florida. So according to polls, this state's not even close, and Donald Trump should win this by a comfortable margin. And actually, Hispanics of Texas, usually people would think they would lean towards in favor of Democrats, but actually, you take a look at demographics and trends in Texas specifically, Hispanics of Texas actually favor Republicans more than what some people may think. And obviously, Hispanics in each state they vote differently. You take a look at Hispanics of California, they vote to the left. And you take a look at Hispanics of Florida, they vote to the right. You won't see as many Cubans in a state like California as you would see in a state like Florida. So yes, it depends on the state. It really depends on the state. It doesn't mean if you're Hispanic, you're obviously going to vote for the left. No, it honestly depends on your state. Because if you take a look at Hispanics of Florida, they tend to vote for the right. Miami flipped for Ron DeSantis. You take a look at Hispanics of California, Nevada, or Arizona. They are different from the ones in Texas. They are different from the ones in Florida. So it really depends. So those are the 3 likely states in one district for Donald Trump. Now, the likely states I would consider in the Joe Biden column would be the state of Colorado, the state of Virginia. That is pretty much it. So I think there would be only 2 likely states for Joe Biden and 3 likely states for Donald Trump. Colorado should not be competitive at all. You have these liberal Californians moving to the state of Colorado and trending it more blue in favor of Democrats. So in the future, futuristic-wise, you take a look at trends, it all favors Democrats in Colorado. So I expect Joe Biden to win the state of Colorado by a likely margin, a comfortable margin, and I don't expect it to be that competitive. I expect Biden to win Colorado by probably, I would say, 8 percentage points, if not maybe even 9 points. And as well as Virginia, I mean, Donald Trump hasn't really been competitive in Virginia ever since 2016, and Joe Biden won the state by a safe margin. He won it by double digits back in 2020. So considering that, even though Joe Biden is more disapproved of now, and he's less of a moderate candidate, quote unquote, I would say, maybe Virginia would be more competitive and maybe it could be even considered a lean margin. But as of right now, I think Biden wins it probably by around 6 to 7 percentage points. It might get somewhat competitive, but Donald Trump won't come close to winning Virginia, which is why I have it considered likely for Joe Biden. So now that we have the likely states out of the way, every single other state that we have not filled out yet will either be lean or tilt. Moving on to the lean states for Donald Trump in the 2024 election, I have is the state of Georgia, the state of North Carolina. Those are the only two lean states I have Trump winning. Let's start off with Georgia. The main reason why Biden won Georgia back in 2020 was because he had high turnout among African American voters. I do not expect him to get the same turnout. He got nearly 90%, or actually over 90% of them in 2020. I don't expect him to do so. I think he might drop as low as 80 or maybe even 70% if Donald Trump is lucky enough. You see, Trump is polling, I believe, around 25% among blacks. So if Trump continues at that good pace, then I think Biden is set to lose Georgia in 2020 and 2024. And in my opinion, I think Georgia is the easiest state for Trump to flip because it was the closest, and it's probably the most likeliest going to flip from blue to red in 2024. And keep in mind, folks, that Trump actually won the state by nearly 5.5 percentage points back in 2016. So considering that, Donald Trump, Georgia is very flippable for him, and I expect him to win it this time around by nearly the margin he won it in last time, or 2016, by 5 points. So I expect Trump to win Georgia in 2024 by exactly 5 percentage points, and actually polls have him up by, I believe, around the margin I have him winning it by around 6 points. So, polls typically overestimate Republicans in Georgia, but I don't think it matters. I think Trump should win it by 5 points. And as well as North Carolina, if Joe Biden were to win North Carolina, I believe his best chances were to be back in 2020, and he fell short. So, considering that Joe Biden fell short in the state of North Carolina back in 2020, he's worse right now than he was back in 2020. He's worse right now than he was 4 years ago. So, considering that, I believe Biden will fall short once again in North Carolina. I think Trump wins it by a lean margin of around 3 to 4 percentage points. And now moving on to the lean states for Joe Biden. I think Minnesota will be lean for Joe Biden, as well as New Mexico would also be lean for Joe Biden. And then as well as New Hampshire, I believe, would also be in the lean column for Joe Biden. So 2 lean states for Trump and 3 lean states for Joe Biden. Let's start off with Minnesota. Minnesota always votes for Democrats in elections. They always favor Democrats in elections. Even when you go take a look back at Ronald Reagan's landslide, he won every single state. He won 49 states besides one, and that one state he did not win happened to be the state of Minnesota. So that goes to show you how much the state of Minnesota favors Democrats in the general election. And in this video, we're not talking about the Senate. We're not talking about the governor's race. We're talking about the general election, where Minnesota always votes blue, no matter how close it can get. It can get within 1%, 2%. It can get really close, but a Republican will not win the state of Minnesota. They may come close to winning it, but they just won't. Like in 2016, that was a good example. It came really close, but Hillary Clinton barely won the state. So, considering that, I think Minnesota will vote for Joe Biden once again, but not by the margin he won it by last time. Of 8 points, I think it will be way closer and more competitive. This time around, I think it will probably be within 5 percentage points, because if you compare Hillary Clinton's margin of Minnesota in 2016 of 2%, and you compare it to Biden's margin of 8% in 2020, if you get the average or median range of exactly 5 percentage points. So I think 5 percentage points is probably fair for Joe Biden in the state of Minnesota, which is considered a lean margin. So I expect Minnesota to get competitive. It may get close, but Donald Trump is not going to win it. No matter how close Minnesota gets, it can be within under a percentage point. Biden's still going to win it no matter what, in my opinion. That's just the way it is. Ronald Reagan won 49 states. That one state he did not win was Minnesota. So considering that, I think Biden's going to win that, and he's not going to win it comfortably. Obviously, it's going to be very close, but he's still going to win it. And as well as New Hampshire goes, I think New Hampshire will be more competitive than it was back in 2020, considering the fact that New Hampshire just does not favor incumbents. The reason why Joe Biden won it last time in 2020 by a significant margin, of a likely margin around 8 percentage points, was because Donald Trump was an incumbent president back then. And what do New Hampshire voters do? They don't favor incumbents. They favor the challenger. And back in 2020, the challenger was Joe Biden, and this time around, it's Donald Trump. So I still expect Joe Biden to win the state of New Hampshire, but I think it will be more competitive, similar to the margin of 2016. Obviously, not quite there because it was decided within under a percentage point. I think Joe Biden will win it by a little bit more than Hillary Clinton did. Similar to Minnesota, I have Biden winning New Hampshire by around 4 to 5 percentage points, which is a lean margin. Typically because they just don't favor incumbents. And what is Joe Biden? He's an incumbent, so it's going to favor Donald Trump. It may get close, but I still think Biden's going to win this state. And New Hampshire is a state that does not typically like Trump type of candidates. They don't like that populism, I would say. So, considering the fact that New Hampshire voters just don't like Trumpy type of candidates, it obviously favors Joe Biden, and New Hampshire is a pro-choice state. We're talking about Donald Trump, guys, a very pro-life candidate, not very pro-life, but the Democrats try to make him seem like he's a far-right extremist on the issue of women's rights. So considering that, even though in my personal opinion, I think he's actually moderate on that issue, New Hampshire does not favor incumbents, and Joe Biden is an incumbent. So now that we have the lean states out of the way, we have 5 states remaining, and each of these 5 states that I have not filled out will either be tilt for Joe Biden or tilt for Donald Trump. And a tilt margin is considered anything within under 1%, which is extremely close, the closest it gets. So let's start off with the tilt states for Donald Trump. I think the tilt states for Donald Trump in 2024, which he's going to win them by under a percentage point, that's how close I think they will be, is the Sunbelt state of Arizona, the Rust Belt state of Wisconsin, and the Rust Belt state of Michigan, which actually, back in January, my January prediction, I had Michigan going to Joe Biden. That's actually one difference of what I had it back in January. So let's start off with the Sunbelt state of Arizona. Both Biden and Donald Trump have won this state at least one time. Trump won it in 2016, and Biden won it in 2020. And obviously, Trump's margin was greater than the margin of Biden won it in 2020. Trump won it in 2016 by 3 percentage points, and Biden only won it in 2020 by under 1%. 0.4 was the margin to be exact. And I honestly think the state of Arizona can go either way. I think they can easily go to Joe Biden, or can easily vote for Donald Trump, because they voted for actually both of them. And what do we know? This is a rematch between both of these candidates that won Arizona at least one time. My honest belief, I think what's happening with the border and the border crisis and the handling of the border crisis from the Biden administration, it's looking very poor for him. And if he continues to do horribly, poor with the border and the border crisis, as you guys know, Arizona is a border state, so it impacts them the most, and it's going to help Donald Trump. It only helps Donald Trump. So considering that Arizona is a border state and is probably the most affected state, then I think that's only going to favor Donald Trump. So if, the border crisis really impacts the election, it's only going to impact the election in favor of Donald Trump. And I think Arizona voters, if they don't like what they're seeing at the border, then they're probably going to turn out for Donald Trump. And if there is a scenario where Biden wins Arizona again, it's probably because you have these John McCain-style neocons, these John McCain-style rhinos that won't turn out for Donald Trump. They may not vote for Joe Biden, but they just won't vote for Donald Trump because of his harsh statements that Donald Trump says about John McCain. Donald Trump keeps bashing John McCain. And as long as he continues to talk bad about John McCain, it's going to offend some of these Arizona neocon voters, the Mitt Romneys of Arizona, the John McCains of Arizona, and they will get offended and they won't turn out for Donald Trump. So considering that, maybe there is a reality in which Joe Biden does win Arizona, and I won't be surprised. And another factor, if Joe Biden wins Arizona, is probably because you have these Californians moving down south to the state of Arizona and trending the state blue and bluer in favor of Democrats. So if you take a look at futuristic-wise and trends and shifts, Arizona is expected to be a Democratic state in the near future, mainly because of the California population migrating to Arizona and trending the state blue. So if it goes to Biden, I would not be surprised. Now moving on to the Rust Belt. Wisconsin, I think, is going to go to Trump, regardless if Michigan does or does not. If Michigan goes to Biden, I still think Wisconsin will go to Donald Trump. Trump won the state back in 2016 by 0.8%. Biden won it back in 2020 by 0.6%. So obviously, with the margins, we can obviously tell that this is a very swingy state. So it can go either way, to the right or to the left. Back in 2020, Biden won it by nearly 20,000 votes. So I think it's very flippable for Donald Trump. And I think this is another state where Donald Trump can flip in 2024. That is the state of Wisconsin. And the last tilt state for Donald Trump, before we move on to the tilt states for Joe Biden, is the Rust Belt state of Michigan. This is another change from my January prediction, which I had Michigan going to Biden. Now I have it going to Donald Trump. The main reason why is because if you did not know, Michigan has a large Muslim population. And if you aren't living under a rock and you know what's happening between Israel and Hamas, then you can obviously tell that Muslim voters are not happy with Joe Biden. And as long as that continues to happen, I expect a state like Michigan to flip in favor of Donald Trump, because I believe there are 240,000 Muslims in the state of Michigan. And that is enough to flip it from blue to red. That is enough. So considering that, if Muslims don't turn out for Joe Biden that the way they did in 2020, then Biden's probably not going to win this state. And they don't have to vote for Donald Trump. They can either vote third party, or they just don't turn out for Joe Biden at all. They don't have to vote for Donald Trump. And if they don't vote for any of them, I think it only gets better and better and easier for Donald Trump to flip Michigan. And if Biden were to win Michigan, it'll probably because of the governor of Michigan. She's very popular, and if I believe she already endorsed Joe Biden. So if that works out, then I think Joe Biden will narrowly win it. But he only won the state back in 2020 by nearly 3 percentage points. So it's very flippable. And the last two final states before I end up this video is the Rust Belt state of Pennsylvania, which I think Biden will narrowly win in 2024. Honestly, I give it a 50-50 chance. I think it's toss-up at this point. And same thing goes for Nevada. I think Biden will narrowly hang on to that state. Let's start off with Nevada. The reason why I think Biden will narrowly hang on to it and probably win it by under percentage point, that's how close I think the state of Nevada can get in 2024, is because if you take a look at Donald Trump's margin in the state of Nevada specifically in 2016 and you compare it to his margin in 2020, he did not improve at all. Hillary Clinton and Biden both won the state by nearly the same margin. So we saw no improvements for Donald Trump in Nevada between 2016 and 2020. They both won it by nearly 2.5 percentage points. So considering that fact, if Trump didn't improve from his margin in 2016 to 2020 in Nevada, I don't think he might improve in 2024, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. And Trump is going to have to flip Reno County in Nevada. And if he doesn't, Nevada's a long shot, and he's probably not going to win the state. And he's going to need to do better in Clark County, the Las Vegas area, which I think he is going to. But will it be enough is the question. I am not sure. Now, you take a look at trends, recent shifts, futuristic-wise, Nevada actually favors Republicans. But if you take a look at the polls, it's favoring Donald Trump. But one thing that we can note in the state of Nevada is that polls in Nevada typically overestimate Republicans and they underestimate Democrats. You take a look at the 2022 midterms. It's a great example of that. Adam Laxalt was favored to do way better, and guess what? He didn't. He lost to Catherine Cortez Masto. So considering that Nevada tends to overestimate Republicans when we're talking about polling data, goes to show you that maybe Republicans are overhyped in the state of Nevada. And I think they need to be humbled, because I think Joe Biden can very well win the state again in 2024, just like how he did in 2020. Nevada hasn't went to a Republican since 2004. So honestly, I think it can go either way, but I think Biden will probably be the narrow winner in this state. And the last and final state to cover in this video before I end out this video is the Rust Belt state of Pennsylvania. Now, in order for Trump to win this state, like he did in 2016, he would need to flip Erie County. Erie County was the tipping point county that helped Trump win in 2016, and it also was the same thing, tipping point county that helped Biden win the entire state of Pennsylvania in 2020. It is located in northwestern Pennsylvania. It is the county at the very top. You can see northwestern Pennsylvania. Trump should probably do better in the Philadelphia or Pittsburgh suburbs. And if he doesn't do better in those type of suburbs, speaking state-wise, I just don't know if he's going to flip the state of Pennsylvania. Now, he very well can, because Joe Biden only won it by a little bit over 1% in 2020. So considering that the margin Biden won it in, I believe only 80,000 votes, it's very flippable for Donald Trump. But I would probably leave it as toss-up, and for the sake of this video, if I were to fill it in either for Trump or Biden, I would probably narrowly give it to Biden in 2024. And now, this is kind of weird, because you would probably think that Michigan would vote to the left of Pennsylvania, which I would agree with you, because in 2020, that was the case. In 2016, that was the case. Pennsylvania usually votes to the right of Michigan, So Michigan will probably be more of a blue state. But because of what's happening in Israel and Hamas, Muslim voters in the state of Michigan, which they have a large population, I believe the largest population out of any other U.S. state. Considering that, I think it's going to piss off a lot of those voters, and they won't turn out for Joe Biden, and it might even cost them to lose the state of Michigan. So that is the main reason why I have Pennsylvania voting to the left of Michigan, which it usually is the opposite. So in my opinion, when it comes to Pennsylvania, it pretty much comes down to that one county. Erie County is usually the tipping point county, and it determines who pretty much wins the entire state of Pennsylvania. I think if Erie County goes to the right, that means the statewide of Pennsylvania is trending in favor of Trump. If Erie County votes to Joe Biden, I think Pennsylvania is trending in favor of Democrats. All eyes in Pennsylvania are all on Erie County. That one county will probably determine the winner of who wins the entire state of Pennsylvania. So there you guys go. Let me know what your thoughts on the map are, what states you agree with, what states you disagree with, your thoughts on the margins of every single state. I think if the election was held today, in my personal opinion, I think Trump wins the election with 287 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 251 electoral votes. So let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below on this map. As final reminder, before I officially end out the videos, we do have channel memberships. The link to them will be pinned in the comment section down below, or you can find them in the description section, or you can just click the join button on my channel page. Become a member today. We have custom perks and custom emojis. To subscribe, as we just hit 1K, we are now on the road to 2,000 subscribers.